You are listening to the Julie Parker Practice Success Podcast, where you discover management insights and strategies for a successful dental practice. There are also interviews with key people in the industry who have advice and services to help you and your team achieve great success. Welcome to this episode of the Julie Parker Practice Success Podcast, and I'm absolutely thrilled to introduce Lyn Carman as our guest today. Now, Lyn and I connected many years ago when I was a dental practice owner and she was a dental practice owner as well, and we've both been on a journey since then. So please welcome Lyn Carman to the program. Welcome, Lyn.
Thank you, Julie. Thank you for having me. It's a real pleasure to chat with you. And we have known each other for a while over the phone, but never really in person.
That's right. And thanks to Zoom,
yeah,
I get to see your lovely face when you're speaking to me, which is a world different. It's wonderful.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
So from the very start, Lyn, were you always working in dental practices? I know that you've been a hygienist in the past as well. Tell us a little bit about your history.
Yeah, thanks. I started as a dental assistant shortly after I left school. Had really no idea where I was headed or what I was going to do. Like many of us, I was inspired by the dental practice that I attended. And then I went on, became a dental hygienist, and now I've got 36 years experience as a clinical dental hygienist and a few other things as practice manager and tutor, mentor, and some really amazing opportunities that I've had. So I think like many people on your podcast, I've heard have had amazing, and others have had amazing mentors. And I think that's the real secret to inspiring us for, well, certainly for my journey. Yeah.
I agree with you. I listen to a lot of podcasts as well, and dentally inspired podcasts. And I agree. It's only just occurred to me with you saying that many of them do say it was because of this wonderful mentor that really showed me that I can have immense enjoyment and satisfaction from the industry. And when I look back over my past, my first boss possibly wasn't the most inspiring, but certainly subsequent ones were very inspiring. And Linda Miles, the practice management guru from the US, who is now I think semi-retired. I'm not quite sure if she's fully retired as yet. I still remember her story that when she first got into the dental industry as a dental nurse, she worked for somebody who really did all they could to bring out the potential in all the people that they had working for them. And it was that tapping into the potential of you that really inspires you to grow and develop into whatever you want to be within the dental industry.
Yeah, so correct. And it is a story that we hear often. And I think it highlights the importance of really, as a new grad, seeking that place. And I know as a new grad, quite often the urgencies are around other things like earning money and, perhaps a competitive market. Perhaps your family or friends are, leading you down a different direction. But I think it's really important to really tap into, as you said, the people that can really support you and help guide you and inspire you to keep going. I think it can make a big difference.
For sure. And your career has certainly led you into different areas because practice ownership was one of the roles that you had a couple of times over.
Yeah, I did. And thank you so much. So we actually connected because you were a practice owner, and I found out about you, and I remember reaching out to you to get some advice and to hear about your journey. So I really appreciate the connection that we had then. And in 2008, I should say, I bought my first practice in Adelaide. And the purpose for me doing that was really because I had such great experiences in practice. And I had been involved with some amazing American mentors, like come across Linda Miles and Omar Reed. And as I think Sue Roosland mentioned, Ken James, and some really incredible experiences. I was involved with Prime Practice, and I'd been able to see what was possible, I should say. And I really felt like we could do it better. I felt like there was a better way to do things, and I still do, and I still look for that better way all the time. So that was a really huge learning curve for me. And I had been worked as a clinical dental hygienist, and also done some practice management right through my career. So I thought that I'd had, this wealth of experience, and I was ready to dive into the world of practice ownership. Man, was that a big learning curve. Like the first year, oh my gosh, I thought, couldn't possibly have that much more to learn. But landed me on my feet or on my ass, whichever one you want to talk about. But what I did was I actually reached out and got support, which I'm really grateful for, because had I muddled through on my own and, just tried to exist, I think I would have crashed and burned. But once again, I was able to lean on some really important people in my life, and also got coaching. So that was a really important part of my journey.
Fantastic. I mean, the coaching element to it, you just have to look at the huge sports stars, golf or tennis, swimming. Everyone has coaches when they want to get the very best out of themselves. Just this recognition that you've always got more to give. And I agree. When I first started owning my practice, you do go in thinking there's a better way. I know how to do it a little bit better than all my previous bosses. You take all the gold that they've given you over the years and then you put your own spin on it. But then I still remember that first day, it was actually an evening, signed all the paperwork, was handed the keys to the practice by David, the dentist I bought the practice from, wonderful man. And I stood there in the waiting room by myself, looking around at the walls going, oh my God, what now? I'm sure a lot of parents feel that way when they first bring their baby home from the hospital.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But
so
it's a wonderful learning journey. And I think going through my life with that constant, how can it be better, is a wonderful thing, because it just gets better and better. And you do feel like you're progressing through, even though there's tough times, you feel like you're progressing through nicely. So congratulations on facing the enormous challenges that have been in your history and moving on. So has your career taken you to date?
Well, after that practice, which I sold, I swore that I would never do it again. I think I mentioned to you at one point, I thought, right, that's it. I've done that, tick that box and move right along to something else. And 12 months later, I was back into practice ownership, and I had another practice. So what's that?
Whoops.
Yeah. Yes. But once again, it was just this desire to create a space where it wasn't, for me, it was very much about having a meaning and having a purpose to bring other people along with me. So I felt as a non-dentist practice owner that I was able to raise other people up in the practice, so that the practice goodwill, I suppose, was spread across the whole practice rather than just sitting on one person's shoulders. Something that you touched on just a minute ago was, that burden of, and I'm going to say burden of responsibility that lies with the practice owner is probably the biggest thing that I became aware of. As far as, even if you're a practice manager, even if you're taking responsibility for the practice, ultimately, when you go to bed at night, you can kind of hand the problem forward a little bit. It doesn't stop with you. And I think that was the biggest realization for me. And it really helped me to understand all practice owners, business owners in general, how, that responsibility of everything really ends with you. That's the load is really on your shoulders. And it's given me much greater understanding to be able to help and support other people. So that was my real purpose. From there, after I sold that practice, or actually I didn't sell it. Well, I did sell it, but I actually merged it into another practice. So two practices actually became one. So I got a lot of experience in consolidating two practices, which was a journey in itself, lots of challenges. And after that, I really felt like I had expired some of my energy and I needed to refuel. So I really stepped away, and because of the way that practice ended, which I won't go into now, I really felt that I had kind of failed, and I had to make the decision to either sit in the corner and sulk or come out fighting. And I came out fighting. There was no other alternative for me. So I ran 1,000,000 miles from dental for a little while, and I went back to study human behaviour, coaching, leadership coaching, which I'm still doing. I'm still studying that, and I think it will be a lifetime of learning in that space as well. And now I've come back realising that dentistry is my passion. It's what I'm good at, and really what I love, and I think where I can make the most difference. So I've really combined now both the coaching and my passion for dentistry. And so now, I'm in a space where I've created my own consulting business and just launched a really exciting space. So,
that is exciting. For a start, I think it's another episode. I'd love to get you back on about merging two businesses together, two dental practices together. That sounds very exciting.
Yeah.
So I would love to get you back on to talk about that. But just to quickly touch on as well, because hopefully there's a lot of dental practice owners out there listening to this podcast, either currently or as they're reflecting back over previous episodes. And we do build up a lot of resistance around the fear of failure or the challenges that are involved in practice ownership, and there are many of them. And one of them, I agree with them, the weight of responsibility lies very heavily on your shoulders. And for me, it was helpful to go down the path of really developing some core values around how I wanted to treat people and the impact I wanted to have on them and the patients and employee dentists coming on board to really help drive effective decision making within the practice. But as you said, you felt, it sounds like you felt a bit burnt after that second practice, and so you just wanted to run 1,000,000 miles from it, but then it prompted you down a different path that was really helpful for you coming to the point where you are now. And practice ownership is absolutely like that. It's the really difficult stuff, the stuff that we resist like crazy, that once we embrace that then allows us to shift up a big gear and start functioning from a much higher level of performance. And we just have to go through the pains to get there. There's no easy path, is there?
No, absolutely not. And I think that's a really important thing to talk about, is people do resist that barrier, or they resist what's difficult, or and we're all guilty, I think, of trying to go around the obstacle or go scramble over the top. And for me, it was really about learning to go through that and actually to bring that with me and create it as part of me, because I think it's easy to say, it's those areas of difficulty and the mistakes that we make is where we grow the most and we learn from. But I think when you're in the middle of that, when you're in the thick of that and you're just doing the do, just getting through every moment, and then, leaving work and then going home to the family and, whatever it is that you've got going on, it's really difficult to sit back and reflect on, okay, so what are all these barriers and resistance pieces that are coming up, and how can I navigate them?
Yeah, and I must be doing a bad job because these challenges are presenting themselves to me, where often that's not the case either. It just means you're a business owner.
Yeah, absolutely.
You can be wildly successful at what you do, and all the challenges will still pass through.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So tell me about your new project.
Well, it became really, really clear to me that there was a lot of people who were really unhappy in their roles, either as employees or for business owners, not having the right team, not having the right people, or feeling that they, didn't have what they need in the practice. And that was through supporting individuals and practices to understand better what was driving their day. And one Sunday night, it was kind of organic in the way that it happened. So one Sunday night, I was sitting at home with my family, and a concept of actually matching people. And I'm reluctant to say recruitment because I don't feel like I'm in the recruitment space, even though that's probably exactly what it is. But bringing people together, creating a match. And, we played with things like it's a dental Tinder and, creating a match, a really good fit for people is just so important, because when we have a match for our culture, our values, we have meaning for why we rock up every day to work, it impacts every part of our life. What we bring home at night is usually a reflection of what we've experienced during the day. And so I and that same night we just sat there playing with some words, and we came up with it's a squad. It's a high functioning squad of individuals and a team that comes together. So we developed Lync Squad, and it was only launched a couple of months ago. It's growing really organically, and I'm really really grateful for the speed that it's growing at. We've got so much to do. We're in the baby space, but I'm really loving being able to provide that service for people.
Fantastic. And that's for people out there who are visual thinkers like myself. It's Lync Squad, LYNC Squad. And I do like the term squad. Team is absolutely relevant, but it is used so often we sometimes lose its meaning around it. But squad, for me, in my brain anyway, it does kind of indicate that everyone within the squad, they're heading towards the same purpose and goal, and they all know what to do to get there.
yeah, absolutely. And that was the thinking around it. And I like the thought of a squad. I suppose the difference for me is really that that values match and that fit, and bringing them together. And like you say, I have this mental image of rowers, in the really skinny, slimline boats and all the oars. And I apologise for any rowers. I'm not a rower, and so if I use the wrong terminology. But if we're all doing things in unison and going in the same direction, we're going to get there, and with a lot more calm. Maybe quicker, depends how fast we paddle, but quicker is not necessarily the goal, but just getting there with a nice, smooth, calm, harmonious stroke, I suppose. So for me, that's the kind of image that it produces. But I think the thing that really drives me is that we can do work placement better. We absolutely can. I think when practices have a gap, they need to fill, and at the moment there's a lot of practices that have a lot of gaps that are really difficult to fill. It's really tempting just to pop anyone in there, and for people who are looking for jobs or seeking work or seeking their ideal day, it's sometimes easy just to say, look, that's just down the road, they pay well, I'll just do that. But it's actually not a good values match for them. So I think there's a lot to be said for really elevating the care that we have when we actually are employing people, or the care that we have when we're looking for a role. And then the flow-on effect of that. I always have this image in my mind, and I've worked in many practices like this where people are harmonious. I'm not saying that conflict doesn't arise. I'm not saying that challenges don't arise, but they can be overcome with tools. And at the end of the day, what happens then is the patients love coming there, so they're receiving better care. They're having a better experience. And everyone's going home at the end of the day, in a much better space. So that's what drives me, and that's what I'm working towards. And I have a goal. It is my intention to have Lync Squad as the largest jobs forum that there is. So there's my goal. I put it out there.
Fantastic. Well, you couldn't have come at a better time, I tell you, Lyn. You would have heard complaint upon complaint. I get many calls from dental practices just desperate for any good candidates. Who's out there? Why is the pool so small? And so I think you coming into this space with a fresh perspective and a fresh intention is absolutely required, because possibly what we've been doing to date is not working all that well anymore. What's been your experience about around the changes within the hiring space for dental team members?
Yeah, I think multifactorial. Definitely COVID has had a big part to play. And in different, I think of that also in different spaces. One is perhaps the JobKeeper. The financial side of what's happened is actually perhaps had a negative flow-on effect, because I think the structure, the way it was positioned, was that people needed to be in a job for 12 months, otherwise they missed out. So some people were in a role for 11 months and they couldn't get JobKeeper. I think that's one part of it. So it created this kind of need to have certainty. Whether we'll ever see it again or not, I don't know, but it kind of brought up a lot of things for a lot of people to stay put in a place where they may not be happy, but what's on the other side is too uncertain. I think the other thing is the huge upheaval that we had in March last year really caused people to stop and reflect on the doing, the rat race, for want of a better word, the just functioning, the process of just getting through every day and getting to the end of it and then going to bed and then waking up the next day. I think a lot of people had cause to reflect on that space. And then I think in that reflection, perhaps there's a lot of practices who aren't harmonious, where people don't feel valued, they don't feel respected, they feel underutilized. And I'm not just talking about employees. I think there's a lot of practice owners that feel that way as well. So if you're reflecting on that and you have the opportunity to make a change because there's been change, enforced on us, I think there's quite a few people who have actually left the profession, because I think there's a lot of people who can perhaps feel like they don't need that level of responsibility and feel undervalued and underutilized and disrespected or whatever it is that's happening for them. So I think there's so many areas, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on that as well, because I know that you're in that space, and talking about roles for people and how people are really struggling.
One of the things I wanted to pick up on, I think you've identified something really key, and I'm going to be really harsh with my verbiage here just to get the point home to people. But I haven't even reflected on this, but you're absolutely right. From the perspective of the COVID situation, I know that the podcasts in America indicate that there's been a smaller, reducing pool of potential dental auxiliary staff members. And one of the reasons is in America, you need to wear full PPE every day. We don't really need to do that here in Australia. But over in America, that was one of the big reasons, was because they were thinking, I don't need to go through all of this and be so hot and be starving for oxygen all day, every day. It's not good for me. I don't want to do it. So I'm out of the industry. But the element of COVID that you reflected upon just then, I think, is really key. And that is, from both sides, the employees and the employers discovered something about each other which was quite unsavoury. Someone very close to me at the start of this, who is a bookkeeper for dental surgeries, said to me, well, this is going to reveal the characteristics of employers and employees, isn't it? And at the time I thought, I wonder what she means. But of course, over the expanse of time, I certainly discovered what she meant. There were employees out there that were desperate to keep a job. As you say, some of them were casuals, so therefore they couldn't get the JobKeeper. They weren't employed in time. They couldn't get the JobKeeper. And the management of the employers around PPE, opening hours, which patients they were seeing, what additional steps in infection control they were taking, how many hours they were put on to work, whether they were made to work from home because they're on JobKeeper or not, whether they were brought into the practice to do spring cleaning to make better use of time. All of those things had wildly different meanings to a whole bunch of different staff members. Some would have gone, yeah, that's fair enough. I'm really lucky to have a job at the moment. Others were, why can't I just stay home off JobKeeper? They're getting the money anyway, big deal. And so employees were looking at employers in a unfavourable light at times because of their management of it, whether it was justified or not. And likewise, other way around as well. Employers were out there going, I've got a great team. We're going to move through this powerfully. Don't you worry. But then for seemingly minor reasons that they didn't want to turn up to work. Why can't we just be at home and just have JobKeeper? And they didn't. Some employees weren't showing the level of loyalty and dedication that the employer thought they had. And so, again, rightly or wrongly, they had a different perception over their employees too. So it happened from both sides. And so I agree. I think there are a lot of relationship breakdowns out there.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's an amazing discussion. And for me, it leads right back to the need for businesses, practices to really have, and for us as individuals, I had this conversation with someone just really recently, really finding out what lights us up, really creating standards and really sticking to those standards as leaders, but also as individuals. Because when things like that happen and our standards or our values, or when we say culture, our culture is our standards and our values. When we don't have them really nailed and we don't clearly have or know what we stand for, we get buffeted by the wind. Something comes from one direction, it's like, oh, boof, and, you go off in that direction, and then someone or something comes from the other direction and you get buffeted. I think unless we really have clear values, standards, expectations, then we haven't got our feet solidly on the ground. Like, I just always feel this, with a solid foundation, with a wide triangle on the base, then, the wind can blow, the seas can, be enormous, and, you rock solid. You can kind of stand and withstand that. So I think that's what that showed. And for me, it really highlights the importance of us learning how do you find out what you stand for? How do you have faith and confidence in who you are? How do you find meaning and what lights you up and find purpose for what you do? Because I think unless we have that, there's a lot of fear around uncertainty, because, it's like uncertainty is kind of like the wind, and the more uncertain you are, the harder the wind blows and pushes in one direction to the other. So I think for me, certainly COVID brought up a whole lot of that for a whole lot of people. And one of the things I think you touched on with the whole PPE thing is the right for people to feel safe, and what safety is for so many people is so different. So whether it's safety because you don't feel like you've got the right PPE, or safety because you don't know the future, and none of us do have a crystal ball, but what safety means for each individual person is so varied. And I think in practices, a lot of people didn't feel safe for whatever the reasons. So, yeah, I think that's a really big discussion.
It is an enormous discussion, and it really did expose all of us at our potential worst, didn't it?
Yeah. And best, there was that balance, there was that flip side. So I think they were slightly polarizing. I think you're right. I think a lot of people said, okay, this is a great opportunity for change and for positive change, and not wanting to go back to whatever normal was, bearing in mind that it was really tough for a lot of people. I fully respect that. But for me personally, it was a great opportunity for reflection. And so I think a lot of positive came out of it as well. But in the process of that, it exposed those deep divides and uncertainties.
Yeah, and we're all at different levels of awareness and anxiety and resilience and strength and leadership and all the things that make us up as human beings. We've all been at different levels throughout this, and so each individual team may have 10 different dynamics going on. Yeah. And I certainly found it was the teams that really did jump on regularly to their Zoom group calls and communicate as much as they could were those ones that have stayed unified all the way through.
Yeah, that's so important, isn't it? Communication and the ability to just express everything and be okay with that. So yeah. I think the consolidation and that harmony within the team really stood a lot of practice as well. Yeah. Yeah.
So you're talking about the triangle. I love that visual aspect of the triangle with its broad, stable base, and then no matter what winds come your way, you'll be able to battle through them beautifully because you've got the foundations there. And talking about, reflecting on that and how you are connecting people together rather than just filling in spaces, there's a space over there, I'll throw a person over there, that should work out. Tell me about how Lync Consulting, Lync Squad are doing things differently.
So we are not, and that's why I said I wanted to avoid the word recruitment, because for me, the way that, and I actually haven't done a lot of research, maybe naively haven't done a lot of research on how a lot of recruitment agencies actually work. I know from a broad perspective, but I apologise to anyone who is in recruitment if this is not you, but my understanding on a really broad level is that recruitment agencies are paid on placement. So the impetus to actually create someone or create a position to be filled is what drives the business side of the recruitment. So Lync Squad is actually a membership based, and it doesn't depend on me placing someone in the right job. It is my role to connect people to actually discover and explore about their what drives them and what they can imagine. There's a really amazing exercise that I share with many people called my ideal average day, and it's really giving yourself the time, sitting down and writing, visualizing, speaking out, recording. Where do you see yourself in the future? What's your ideal day? And, it can't be I'm on holidays on a deserted island or, sitting on a beach somewhere or whatever, that escapism is. It can't be that because, that every day just isn't reality. So what does your ideal average day look like? When you wake up, what do you have for breakfast? What time do you wake up? How do you wake up? With an alarm, without an alarm? What's your ideal? What do you have for breakfast? Who are you sharing breakfast with? Where are you sitting? What's your house look like? What's your job look like? Who are your clients? Who are your patients? What is your practice look like? All of that, and going into that and really digging into what lights you up, what's really important to you. And then obviously, I'm not going to go through that with every single person to that depth, but that's the kind of information that I'm after. And then also seeking the values and the vision for the practice, and seeing, there's huge variations in how practices run, and that's great. We need diversity and variables, and we need everyone to be different and embrace all of those differences. So each person is actually going to have a different set of values, and their vision is going to look completely different. So really connecting those people. And also within the membership, as Lync Squad grows and develops, and we find out more and more what the needs are of individuals and practices, then we're going to be adding the membership platform will have resources, we'll have a community of people who can share other people. So we can introduce, there's so many people in this space that, and some are very obvious, who are doing amazing things. And there's many, many, many people who are doing amazing things that are really quiet, achiever level, and actually embracing those people as well and sharing the skills and strengths that they're offering as well. So people like yourself who are, offering this amazing service to practices, if someone doesn't know about you, to support you in that as well. And, there's just so many areas of people doing amazing things that we'd love to share and just build the whole community. And I suppose one thing that's really important that I feel that I would love to share is, a lot of what I've talked about is in the human behavior side of things, but how did I bring that into dentistry? Because dentistry for me, oral health for me is the thing that I want to shout from the rooftops. We haven't in the last, we haven't at all, I was going to say last 100 years, but we haven't really done much to improve the statistics across the globe, not just in Australia, for oral health. And if we can actually, there's something missing. Why can't we do this better? We have the knowledge. We know it's preventable disease, yet we don't seem to be making any inroads into this. So there's something behind that for me, because if we've got all this knowledge, we've got the ability, we've certainly got the skills, what are we hiding from? Why are we sitting in the background just prepared to muddle along like we've always done, when we have so many amazing skills and we're keeping them to ourselves, it seems? We need to be able to share that, to educate the rest of the health profession. I was having a conversation with someone at a restaurant just recently who was waitressing, and she's doing in her final year of speech pathology. And she had no idea that we had any connection in our roles whatsoever, and I was gobsmacked. So here she is in 4th year, and I said, we've got a lot in common. And she was kind of looking at me going, really? Like what? Like, you deal with teeth, don't you? So, we need to get out there and educate and shout from the rooftops what we do. And that's the only time I feel that we're going to actually make inroads into looking after people who need care, allowing people, enabling people to take responsibility for their own oral health. So for me, finding out what lights people up and enabling people to actually step into their own light is part of that. Because until we feel confident, until we trust our skills and believe in ourselves that we have amazing ability, we're all just going to sit in the shadows and things are just going to keep rolling, and it'll just be the same, in 20 years' time, and another 5 years' time, it'll still be the same as it is today. So that's how they drew them together. Yeah,
that's very true. And it's the same as an individual. If they're not truly acknowledging and seeing the power of their influence, of their skill, of their talent, of their thing, and the impact, the magical impact it can have on others, they're not going to be boldly moving forward, making sure they're influencing, educating, informing people about the possibilities that are open up to them. And we've mentioned in the past on a previous Zoom call that some of the people within the dental industry really do suffer a low self-confidence problem because they're not out there singing from the rooftops, hey, come this way, watch me, and I will let you know how I can have an enormously positive impact on your world. And to really understand as dentists and people within the dental industry what you are actually have the potential to create in your patients or for your patients.
Yeah, absolutely. I do remember that conversation that we had, and I think part of that was really being aware that perhaps a lot of people listening would simply love to step off that edge, or step onto that stage perhaps, and really shine their light and really do know that they have a lot to offer within themselves, but it's that confidence. And I remember sharing with you that someone that had asked me recently, what are my fears and what held me back or holds me back still. And I said, imposter syndrome, the thought that, what would someone want to know from me? And they kind of looked at me and said, what, you feel like that? And I was like, yeah, absolutely. Every single day. I've overcome some of it, but still, I still suffer from, the thought that just go back and do what go back into the clinic and, deal with one-on-one because you're really confident in that space and comfortable in that space. But what it's enabled me to do is realize that it's actually not about me and my confidence. It's about what I have to offer. And what can I do for others? And that sense of contribution is wonderful. And everybody has that need to contribute, whichever way you want to say it. And so I think it's really about taking the focus off ourselves and believing that we have a lot to give and a lot to offer, and then going out and sharing that just in little steps. You didn't have to go from woe to go. But I do think that no matter who you look at, no matter who's on the stage, no matter who's shining really, really brightly. I think it's a universal phenomenon that everyone feels like they're not good enough to be there, that they're comparing themselves with somebody else, whether it's the dentist down the road or the hygienist down the road or the OHT down the road or the person you saw at a meeting or the DA that's, just got elevated in her position, or the new DA that's just come on board, or, whoever it is or whoever you are. I think we're always comparing ourselves. And I don't know sometimes what criteria we're using to compare.
Yeah, and that's the problem, isn't it? That when we are comparing ourselves to somebody else, we are bringing in a comparison that has no space for our particular talent, our particular impact. And so we never break it open enough for us to actually be able to see inside and say, what impact do I want to have on the industry? And that's an intriguing question, to ask anybody in whatever role they have. If you just kept going down a path boldly, forget about who do you think you are, but what is your idea? Where would you like to be in 5 or 10 years' time? What impact would you like to be having? What would you like other people to be describing you as, and your impact as in the industry? That's a beautiful question.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? And I think we can let that one just sit there, because I think if people start actually asking themselves that question, the next thought is going to be amazing.
I agree.
It just, that's as far as, if you ask that question and let that sit, I think there's a lot of people that will realise, what they're getting closer to what their ideal average day might look like in the future. And I am a bit of an idealist, but I do think this is totally possible, that if we elevate our thinking into that space, we can make a huge impact on our roles, whether that's in a practice that's got a single chair, whether it's a practice, a 16-chair practice, whatever it is. I think we can have that huge impact that we'd like to have.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you were mentioning before something that made me think about a family unit. You were talking about the culture of a particular practice, and I've always said to every practice that I've worked with, you do have a team culture. It may not be ideal, but it's, you may not have put it there intentionally, but you do have a team culture. And I'm imagining, with the sort of discussions that you're having, there's a team of people who feel like they're in the right practice. They're a practice and they feel like they've got the right team members with them. And you've got everybody just having a level of enthusiasm and excitement about the role they're playing in the purpose of the practice itself that they're playing within, and it's also serving an individual life purpose as well. And when you think about the kind of environment that patients come into, I think that's what you were talking about, patients, what patients perceive. When patients come in and you say they do witness what's going on in your team and it's having an impact, you think, oh, yeah, airy, fairy. But when you were a child, you would walk into a friend's home, and we all have these memories. Some families were quite disconnected. They were all off in different rooms of the house. They weren't really engaged with each other. Other families, you went in there, everyone's hanging around the kitchen and chatting and eating and all the rest of it. You went into some families, there was hostility. If you'd said the wrong thing, everyone bristled because someone was going to be told off by one of the parents. And then you go into other homes and everything's very warm and embracing and loving and caring. And when we're talking about the character types, the type of team members, the type of practice owners that can create that lovely, caring, warm family where visitors come into and they feel that and pick up on that and conform to that beautiful, caring environment straight away. We are talking about a group of people who have identified enough about what they want in life to determine, this is the group of people I want to work with. This is the purpose I want to work towards with these people.
Yeah. And I think you articulating that, I can feel that you've experienced that. And I know that I certainly have. And I know that anyone who has would want to replicate that and more anywhere they go. So it is a beautiful image, but there's also that space for the other types of families as well. It's not all patients will want the entire embracing of the family. There's room for everybody. There's an abundance of patients. There's abundance of everything, really. I was speaking to somebody last night who said, there just isn't enough patients to go around. And we kind of unpacked that a little bit. And I said, well, how does that work? If we actually did the numbers, and I'm not great with numbers, the numbers are not my thing. I can do them, but they're not my thing. If we actually did the numbers, there's more than enough patients to go around. And it's about how do you actually bring or invite people into your practice, and how do you make that point of difference with your practice. And I think when you have that alignment, whatever it is, whatever type of family that you've just described it is, when things like extreme things like COVID comes, then you have that bond. People know what's expected of them. People can align to that expectation or that standard. When you introduce people into your family, your practice, your team, then you know what standards you can offer them. You know what the expectations of them are, and so therefore you can give that to the new team member. I think sometimes we plop a new team member into a practice and we expect them to conform to the family protocols, and without even knowing what they are. And so a lot of people will come in and bring what they've brought from another place, because that's what they know. And if no one's indicated that, they need to do it any differently, that's what they'll do. And then when they don't perform in that family protocol, then, nobody's happy with their performance. And I think it's unfair quite often that practice new team members aren't given that clear description, what's not negotiable, what is negotiable, and then they agree to that. Then there's a discussion that can be had when someone's not performing, or someone's feeling like the expectations are too great on them, or there's just no communication at all, perhaps. That happens in so many practices. People just don't feel like there's any time or any communication.
That's right. There's an assumption, or they should know that.
Yeah. ESP, telepathy, and osmosis.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And so you were talking before about when we're aligning team members with practices, for the practice to understand what their vision is and what their purpose is. What's been your experiences with the practices that you've worked with in the past and with your work in Lync Squad? How many of them really have that well articulated, well formulated in their brain, and also well communicated to their teams?
That's a really good question. Must be a research project in that. I would hazard to say, all anecdotal, and based on my experience, is that the majority of practices have a vision. I would say, I'm going to pick numbers out of the hat, 60% of them, it's written somewhere that is in the back room. And therefore, the vision that's written and the vision that's actually being lived daily quite often aren't congruent, because, they're not aligning to the dream or the vision that they had written down, perhaps. Or the vision is just words that sound nice. And there are processes that you can go through to actually identify and bring your vision to life. So I think, in my experience, a lot of people, a lot of practices, a lot of practice owners, they hear vision, mission, purpose and go, blah, blah, don't talk to me about that stuff. It doesn't mean anything. Though when I meet people who have a clear vision and they really understand the meaning and why they are doing what they're doing and why their vision is so important, they actually bring it to life every day. And as an employee, as a team member, it's so much easier to align with that when it's strong, it's lived, it's something that you can measure against. It's something that, you can build structure around to support your vision or your culture or your mission. For me, it is this 4 steps. It's your environment, which is your culture, which is, what does it look like? What does it feel like? What does it sound like? And then it's structure under that. So how do you build structure? How do you put benchmarks in place, whether it's KPIs, whether it's a procedures manual, whether it's, anything that's actually going to be structural in order to support that environment. And under that is the implementation. So how do we actually now implement that structure, which then backs up our environment? And then underneath that is, who are the people that we need to do that? So the 4 steps for me, whereas quite often I think that people go to the people first, like, I've got a gap, I need to fill it, let's grab a person. And then the culture becomes, well, that person wants to do this. So then the environment, the culture is kind of muddled. Whereas I think that if you really value the people in your business, you've got to have all those other things in place first in order to bring someone into that space, and then let them know how they can implement the structure that holds up your environment. So for me, it's really clear 4 steps that have to be taken into account. And one of the other programs that I run is really based on that. So for a lot of people, it's, the people are the most important thing, and that's what they'll say. But how do you actually enact that? How do you make or create an environment where people are actually the most important in the practice? Because it's not the building, it's not the best equipment, it's not the the paintings on the wall, it's not the brand of equipment that you have. Take all the people out of that, and you've just got a building with equipment in it. So for me, I think sometimes we forget the core of who we are as a team, as a practice, as a entity, a living, breathing business. And so I think quite often that people quarter, I'm not going to give out a quarter, but the part of the 4 that's the people quite often starts at, people think they have to start at the top and put their people first. I think the people come last in that, if you understand what I mean.
Yeah, absolutely. If a practice is intrigued by what you are offering in terms of helping them get a fantastic team together, and team members are out there wondering the same thing, how can I utilize Lync Squad to help me find my ideal practice? What would be their normal journey with you? What would be the first step, for example?
Yeah, so going to the website, there is a registration page there. Once you've registered, and certainly happy to have a conversation, my contact details are there. You can email me, phone me. But once you've made the decision that you would like to register and be a Lync Squad member, there is a fee for practices to join Lync Squad. For individuals who not necessarily even want to be looking for a job right now, they may not be looking, but for anyone who wants to join Lync Squad as an individual, to build on the resources or have access to the resources that are building, that's complimentary, that's free, there's no charge. So they can go in and register, they fill out an online questionnaire, which gives me some of that, just touches on some of that information. There is a thinking profile that we can organise, and that's a free gift. So that's already online as well. And then we'll set up a time to actually go through some of those questions, have a conversation, find out what lights you up in a bit of a discovery session. And then from there, it's about really me matching, if someone's looking for work, matching those practices up with the individuals. And it's dentists, it's hygienists, it's OHTs, it's nurses, it's reception, it's admin, it's the whole team. So there's, obviously I have a lot of resources for dental hygienists and practices implementing dental hygienists. But it's for everyone. It's for the whole team. It's the whole thing. So the journey is also evolving and will evolve as Lync Squad grows and the platforms become, really what people want. And that's what I'd really love to develop is, getting the feedback of what people actually are missing, where are the gaps, what are people needing, what aren't they able to find? Because I think for me, the process and why it was so organic for me was because this space, I couldn't find anywhere to help me in that space. So, when people go looking, there's, the ones, typical places that you do go. And I see a lot of questions actually on social media, particularly, where is everyone going to find, employees, or where is everyone going to find, their ideal job? So for me, it was about creating that so that we would have somewhere to go. And I'm really keen to develop that and allow that to evolve much more into what people need. So that's the beginning of the journey, and where we end up is somewhere really amazing.
Wonderful, wonderful. As I said at the start of this interview, you have come at a perfect time. There have been so many concerns around trying to fill team member slots over the past years, and moving away from that mentality is a marvellous thing. I keep being reminded throughout our discussion just the importance of purpose in our life. And I think it was Daniel Pink's book, Drive. He identified 3 core drivers that direct all of our behaviours. One of them is mastery, to get better and better at what we do. Another one is autonomy, that we have direction over our own actions and behaviours, that we haven't got someone telling us what to do at all times. But the third one is purpose. Yeah. And as individuals and as a team, to be working towards a common goal, something that's bigger than just ourselves, is one of our internal drivers. And so really tapping into this part of getting a team together, making sure that you've got a common purpose, making sure that you have got a stated and obvious and well-communicated purpose, so people can start being attracted to that rather than just, that practice is just down the road, it's going to be nice and easy to drive to. Because making it easy to drive to will only be a motivating factor for a short period of time until other stuff comes up that is bigger than that. Yep. But the purpose can keep people around for a long period of time and help them maneuver the challenges that do come up with all teams as you move through different times, such as COVID.
Yeah, absolutely. And there will, I tend to paint this, beautiful, idealistic space, and I know that it's not like that on a day-to-day basis. And when we bring it back to the nuts and bolts of actually working in a practice, going to work every day, owning a practice, we do have to start with these really, really small steps and, put one foot in front of the other and consolidate that bit of or that new skill or that new technique or that new protocol or that new process that we have just learned is actually going to help us take us to the next level. I think it is really important, though, as you say, that people really articulate their purpose. In the last few decades, we've really been under an ambition-driven space, or within an ambition-driven space. And don't get me wrong, think there's absolute healthy space to be in ambition, but I think we need to bring in more meaning, because that's and purpose, which is what you just said, which is a real core need for every individual. So when we are just doing the do and ticking the boxes, and we have to have successful businesses, we have to be making money, because without making money, we can't serve anybody. And behind that, though, there has to be meaning. There has to be that purposeful driver to help us get up every morning and go, okay, going to work, I'm going to do the job, and I'm happy about that. Maybe not every day, but, if the majority of the days are you're getting out of bed because you have a purpose to fulfill, then I think you get to the end point, wherever that is, and you can look back and say, I haven't left any fuel in the engine, in the tank. I'm proud of what I've done. For some people, it's about legacy. For some people, it's about contribution. For some people, it's just, getting through each day with, yeah, that was a good day. That was an okay day. It's so varied for everybody. And what is a good day for some will be, an exceptional day for others. And I think getting clear on that ideal average day, keep coming back to that, because I constantly do. For me, even in a day, I will say to myself, for what purpose am I doing this? How does this fit where I want to go? Because I'm really good at procrastinating and, finding shiny, bright things that take me off in a different direction. And I think that's great. We all do that. But I feel that we need to come back to that purpose and what drives us all the time. Then we get to shine in our own space. And it doesn't mean, shine like the next person. It means shine in our own unique individual space.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Well, I do encourage all of our listeners to go directly to your website, which is Lync, Lync, lyncconsulting.com.au. Become a member of Lync Squad. You've got a whole bunch of useful information on your website as well, and I imagine that's just going to keep expanding and growing over the coming months and years.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Julie. And I just would like to say congratulations on your podcast. I've been really enjoying the guests that you've had on and the learning, and congratulations for all you're doing and helping other people to be inspired and to try new things and new ideas.
Oh, well, thank you so much, Lyn. I really do appreciate it. And I'm so pleased that our connection has strengthened so much more now that we've got ourselves in each other's faces, even though it's just on Zoom.
Yeah.
You're in Melbourne, next time I'm in SA.
Absolutely.
Lovely. Thank you so much. Hey, if you enjoyed listening to this episode, you should join the club. The club members receive an online lunch and learn every week where I share insights, systems and strategies to improve the success of your practice. These lunch and learns could not be easier. They are recording so you can watch them at a time that suit you. Members also have full access to the library of all of our past topics. It is a powerful and effective way to upskill your team. I hope to see you there.